By age 50, you've lost about 15% of the muscle you had at 30. That's not aesthetics. That's the metabolic organ that burns most of your calories at rest, and it's disappearing whether you notice or not. I'm Sophia Hart. I read the research for a living, and what I do here is straightforward. I go through the studies, sort the solid from the shaky, and tell you what they actually mean for the body you're living in. So let me start with something you've felt, but maybe never had a name for. If you're somewhere past 40, you've probably noticed your body answering differently. Even though you haven't changed the questions, you're eating the way you've always eaten, moving the way you've always moved, and somehow the results stopped matching the effort. The jar that opened on the first twist now wants a second. The grocery bags feel heavier coming in from the car. You catch yourself reaching for the railing on stairs you used to take without a thought. And the number on the scale? It might barely move, while the shape underneath it quietly rearranges itself. Here's the first thing I want you to actually hear, because almost no one says it to you straight. This is not a willpower problem. You are not lazy, and you have not let yourself go. Your body is doing exactly what biology built it to do, and once you understand that, you stop fighting yourself and start working with it. Now here's the part that makes this so hard to catch in time. You can see fat arrive. It shows up in the mirror, in a photo someone took at the wrong angle, in the waistband that used to have a little room. But you cannot see muscle leave. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't swell. There's no warning light on the dashboard. It slips away a little at a time, year after year, completely silent. Which is exactly why most people don't go looking until something they took for granted suddenly feels hard. And we are not talking about a cosmetic problem. When we went through the research on this, and there is a mountain of it, the studies kept circling back to one uncomfortable fact. How strong your muscles are isn't really about appearance at all. It tracks with unsettling accuracy how long and how well you're going to live. In 2022, researchers publishing in the journal Age and Aging followed more than 120,000 adults across 28 countries. They measured something almost laughably simple: how hard each person could squeeze with one hand. The pattern was hard to look away from. The weaker the grip, the higher the odds of dying in the years that followed, from nearly every cause they tracked, cancer included. A handshake, it turns out, is a quiet status report on the rest of you. Sit with that for a second, because it reframes the whole thing. The softness you've been noticing isn't a vanity problem you're supposed to feel bad about. It's a signal, an early one, from the system that keeps you upright, steady, and running. So the real question was never whether you're losing muscle. Past 40, you are. Quietly, steadily, whether you set foot in a gym or not. The questions that actually matter are sharper ones. Why the loss speeds up exactly when it does. Why the most common piece of advice, just eat less, can end up stripping away muscle right alongside the fat. And what years of careful research say genuinely slows the whole thing down. That's the thread we're going to pull. And we're going to pull it slowly, because the details are exactly where almost everyone, including a lot of well-meaning advice, gets this wrong. So let's start with the question that actually explains the rest. Why does the loss speed up exactly when it does? For most of your life, building and keeping muscle was close to automatic. You ate a normal meal, your body read the protein in it like a clear instruction: repair, rebuild, hold the line, and your muscle answered. Scientists call that answer muscle protein synthesis. Picture it as the repair crew that clocks in after every meal and every bit of effort, patching and reinforcing the tissue you've got. Here's what shifts after 40. The crew is still on payroll, but the muscle goes a little hard of hearing. The same meal, the same protein, carries the same instruction, and the response that used to be loud and instant comes back muffled. There's a name for it: anabolic resistance. In plain terms, your muscle stops listening as well as it once did. This is the part that reframes years of quiet frustration. It isn't that you stopped doing the right things. It's that the right things stopped landing the way they used to. The signal goes out, the muscle leaves it on red. We went looking for how solid this really is, and the evidence runs deep. In 2022, a team publishing in the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia, and Muscle pooled 74 separate controlled trials. Eating more protein reliably helped adults build and hold lean tissue, but older bodies needed a noticeably bigger push to get the same answer a younger body got for free. Same biology, higher price of admission. And not every part of your muscle ages at the same pace. You've got slow fibers, built for endurance, standing, walking, carrying, and fast fibers, built for power and quickness, catching yourself when you trip, pushing up off the floor, reacting when something happens fast. The fast, powerful ones shrink first and fade fastest, which is why, for a lot of people, the earliest sign isn't in the mirror at all. It's the stumble you don't quite catch, the reaction that's gone half a beat slow. Power leaves ahead of size, so the scale and the mirror end up being the last two places you'd ever notice. Now, I want to be straight with you, because the internet loves to make this sound like a death sentence. It isn't. A large share of this slowdown comes from one ordinary thing. We move and load the muscle less than we used to. And the research is clear that muscle which gets challenged starts listening again. The volume on that signal can be turned back up. That matters, and we'll get specific about exactly how. But first you have to see what's really at stake when this tissue walks out the door, because it takes far more with it than strength. What slips away, quietly, is a huge part of how your body burns fuel and handles every single meal you eat. And that is where this stops being abstract and starts being personal. So here's what actually walks out the door alongside your muscle, and why it reaches every meal you eat. Start with the part you've probably heard before. Muscle is hungry tissue. It costs energy to carry around even while you sit perfectly still, so losing it nudges your resting burn down a notch. That's real, but it isn't the part that quietly reshapes your health over the years. This is. The real shift is about sugar. Every time you eat something with carbohydrate in it, a sandwich, a bowl of rice, a piece of fruit, it breaks down into glucose and pours into your bloodstream. That sugar has to be cleared, and fast, because blood sugar left sitting high is something your body treats as an emergency. So where does most of it go? Into your muscle. Muscle is the main reservoir your body uses to pull sugar out of the blood and tuck it away. How main? In a 2020 review in the journal Comprehensive Physiology, researchers put a figure on it that belongs on a wall somewhere. Your skeletal muscle clears roughly 80% of the sugar that enters your blood after a meal. 80%. It is, by a wide margin, the largest sponge you own. Now follow the chain, because this is the whole game. Shrink the sponge, and the same meal has fewer places to land. Sugar lingers longer. Your pancreas notices and sends out more insulin, the messenger whose job is to knock on your cells and tell them to let the sugar in. Run that system long enough, with less and less muscle to soak up the load, and the cells start answering that knock more slowly. That slow answer has a name: insulin resistance. And it's widely regarded as the earliest crack in metabolic health, one that can show up quietly years, sometimes decades, before a single line on a lab report ever looks wrong. Here's the flip almost no one says out loud. Two people can eat the identical meal and meet two completely different fates with it. And a large part of that gap is simply how much muscle each of them is carrying to put the sugar into. The softer, lower muscle body isn't being punished for what it ate. It just has a smaller place to put it. So this was never really about a number on a scale. What you've been slowly losing is a metabolic organ that helps decide where your food goes, toward fuel and repair, or towards storage and trouble. Quick aside, since we're roughly halfway through and the next stretch is where all of this clicks together. If this is useful to you, take 1 second and subscribe. It's the simplest way to keep breakdowns like this one coming your way, minus the hype and the shame. All right, back to it. Because there's one more turn in this story, and it's the part that makes muscle loss so easy to miss. Your bathroom scale can sit perfectly still through every bit of what I just described. And in a way, the stiller it sits, the more it may be hiding. So let's talk about the most misleading number in your house, the one under your feet. A bathroom scale measures exactly one thing, your total weight, and it tells you nothing about what that weight is made of. It's a device that weighs the suitcase without ever showing you what's packed inside. And here's the trap. You can lose muscle and add fat at almost the same pace, pound for pound, and the needle barely twitches. The number holds steady while your body quietly trades the tissue that protects you for the tissue that weighs on you. There's a name for that exchange when it runs far enough: sarcopenic obesity. Shrinking muscle and surplus fat arriving together, each one making the other worse. And because the scale stays calm, most people never suspect it's happening. You don't have to look heavy to have it either. A slim person who's quietly lost their muscle can carry the same hidden problem as someone twice their size, which is why "I'm not even that big" turns out to be no protection at all. This is where the stakes stop being about how you look or feel and start being about how long you've got. In 2024, a study in JAMA Network Open followed nearly 6,000 older adults and tracked who was carrying this exact combination. Over the next 10 years, the people with that hidden pattern, low muscle paired with excess fat, carried a clearly higher risk of dying. And the thing that flagged them was not their weight. It was a measure of their muscle. Their scale, in plenty of cases, looked completely unremarkable. Sit with what that means. For years, a lot of us have been checking in with the one instrument that was never built to answer the question we actually care about. Now follow this further down the road, because muscle isn't only a metabolic story, it's an independence story. The same tissue that parks your blood sugar is the tissue that gets you up off the floor, carries the laundry up a flight of stairs, catches you when your foot slips off a curb. Let enough of it go, and the research traces a grim little sequence. Weakness, then a fall, then a fracture, then a hospital bed. And for far too many people, that's the moment the life they were living narrows into a smaller, more dependent one. We don't think about it at 40 because it feels like someone else's problem. But the muscle you defend now is the version of you that's still climbing your own stairs at 80. So if you felt like a failure every time the scale behaved while your body kept changing anyway, you can set that down. You weren't failing. You were reading the wrong dial, which leaves the only question actually worth your time. Knowing what's being lost and why it matters this much, what does the research say you can genuinely do to hold on to this tissue and rebuild what's already slipped away? That part is more encouraging than you'd expect. Here's the part I've been waiting to reach, because it's genuinely good news. Muscle is one of the most responsive tissues you own. It answers. Even decades into the loss, even in people in their 70s and 80s, the right stimulus rebuilds it. You are not too late. So here's what the research actually points to. 3 levers in the order they matter. The research is blunt about the first one, and nothing replaces it. The muscle has to be worked against real resistance, lifting, pushing, or pulling something heavy enough that the last few repetitions are genuinely hard. This is the loud signal, the one thing that gets aging muscle listening again. In 2025, a network analysis in the journal Sports Medicine pooled 151 separate trials in older adults and confirmed what the field keeps finding. Resistance training rebuilds strength, muscle size, and physical function at essentially any age. The most effective programs tend to run just 2 or 3 sessions a week, working the major muscle groups. Not punishing, consistent. The second lever is the raw material, protein. You can send the build signal all day, but if the bricks aren't there, nothing goes up. And because older muscle is harder of hearing, the research suggests it needs more protein than the old standard, not less. Many studies land near 1 to 1.25 grams per kilogram of body weight a day, spread across meals instead of piled into dinner. There's an amino acid, leucine, that works like the ignition key for the building process, and each meal needs enough of it to turn the engine over. In a 2024 network analysis in the journal Nutrients, pooling 78 trials, getting enough protein clearly boosted the muscle and strength people gained from resistance training. Food first, meat, fish, eggs, dairy, beans, at every meal, not only at night. The third lever is the one everyone asks about, creatine. So let's be straight, separate from the marketing. Creatine is among the most heavily studied compounds in this whole field. A 2021 review in Nutrients found that, paired with resistance training, it tends to add a little more lean tissue and a little more strength than training by itself, though the results across individual studies are mixed. The key words are paired with. On its own, without the work, it does almost nothing. It's an amplifier, not a substitute. It isn't magic, and it isn't required. It's a small, well-researched edge, And that's exactly how the evidence treats it. Notice the order, because that's the whole point. Training is the signal, protein is the material. Creatine is, at most, a little amplifier on top. People obsess over the third lever and skip the first, which is exactly backward. You aren't fighting your biology here. You're finally handing it the two things it's been quietly asking for: a reason to keep the muscle and the materials to build it. So that's what the evidence says works. The one thing left is the piece that actually decides whether any of it happens, and it has nothing to do with how much you know. So here's the last piece, the one that decides everything. It isn't knowledge. You now understand more about why your body is changing than most people ever will, and understanding, on its own, builds exactly 0 muscle. The real reason this slips past so many of us is simple, and it isn't a character flaw. The loss is quiet. It never picks a fight. There's no morning you wake up and feel the muscle that left in the night, so there's never a today that feels urgent enough to begin. The decline runs on patience, and it is endlessly patient. Which means the whole thing comes down to one unglamorous habit: starting before the warning you're waiting for ever shows up, and then simply repeating it. Not perfectly, not heroically, just again and again, through the ordinary weeks when nothing feels different yet. Step back and look at the full shape of this. The thing you've been quietly losing was never about a smaller reflection in a mirror. It's the tissue that decides where your food goes, that holds your blood steady after a meal, that carries you through your own life on your own terms. The scale couldn't see it leaving, and the standard advice often pointed you in the wrong direction. But none of that is a verdict. This is one of the few parts of aging you genuinely get a vote in, and the body has shown over and over that it will answer the moment you ask it to. You don't need to overhaul your life this week. You need to pick up something heavy a couple of times, put real protein on your plate, and refuse to let the quiet talk you into waiting. That's the whole turn. If you want the research pulled apart and translated into what it actually means for your body, minus the hype, minus the shame, then subscribe. And leave a comment with the question you want me to dig into next. I read every one, and the next video usually starts in that comment section. You spent years being told the changes in your body were your fault, or simply your age. They were neither. They were a signal. And starting today, one you finally know how to answer.